Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a friend to choose an episode and their favourite things about it, and I have to watch, commentate along, and see if I can guess what those favourite things might be.
I'm Graham Kibble-White. I'm a TV journalist, a would-be animator, a should-be repentant former reviewer for Doctor Who magazine, and a gossip. The story I've selected is Sleep No More, written by Mark Gatiss and directed by Justin Molotnikov. It's one of the greatest Doctor Who stories ever. I know there's ill feeling towards it in fandom, but I can't see a single thing wrong with it. And besides, fandom is hardly Ofcom, so I don't care. Yes, I was initially resistant when I learned the story was going to be presented as found footage. A good 10 years after that cinematic conceit felt at all vital. But in fact, what it does with that notion is present a Doctor Who story from the inside out. I also like the fact that baddie Gagan Rasmussen obviously provided something of an inspiration to Matthew Sweet the next time he was in Specsavers. Anyway, here's an edit point for Toby.
Oh, that was a great introduction. I wish you could see it. I've long since abandoned the idea of doing these as videos. Time is not on my side. But Graham Kibble-White, who you heard there, did a lovely animated version of himself, caught on video camera, a la some of the footage used to tell this particular Doctor Who story. That will be available for patrons. Somebody had the very clever idea of saying, well, the people who've recorded videos for the now abandoned idea of releasing these as YouTube videos, I might one day, but it will be a very long time in the future. Many sleeps between now and then. Stick them on the Patreon feed, and that's great because it's a way of releasing material I don't actually have to do anything to. So, but it is a joy because Graham's gone to a lot of effort there, and I feel bad that you will have to simply conjure it with your imagination. But it's a lovely black and white avatar of Graham, who has a book coming out as I record this. Called Adventures in Type and Space, about the title sequences and graphics and logos of all things Doctor Who from 10 Acre Films. If you're a patron, I would urge you to get that in the next month or so when it comes out. If you're a non-patron, it will already be out. I hope there are copies left. If not, go to eBay now and buy them for a fortune. Graham, I know because he wrote for Doctor Who magazine, and we've chatted since, and he's been very helpful with various bits and bobs that I've done, and hugely encouraging about too much information. And in the early days of my doing it, gave them a real push and a real boost, and I'm grateful to him. He has chosen Sleep No More. Do you know what? I'm forcing myself to do this. Ironically, I've just been asleep and missed half of a podcast I should have been on, and I'm feeling hugely repentant. But there we go. Here I am. So I'm not sleeping no more. I'm sleeping at odd hours of the day, so I feel slightly groggy, which I guess feels kind of appropriate for diving into this. But I am, with the caveat, I have seen this episode twice, and that is not good for me. I tend to have seen a lot of Doctor Who, a lot more than that. But this period of Doctor Who is not one I'm hugely well versed in now. So I claim no necessary insight or knowledge or anything useful. So I will be sort of reacting, as one does. I suppose that's all right, isn't it? It doesn't have to be a sort of fact fest and a list of actors' achievements or trivia that I often fill these with. So anyway, look, this might be slightly different. I really didn't want to do this one, but I want to do the classic story that I've got scheduled next, and I put this off too often. It's no offence to this story, by the way. It's my confidence levels with Doctor Who of this period, and I've got a few more recent episodes coming up, and I worry about them. But everybody says it's fine, and that they quite enjoy hearing me scrabble about trying to find something to say about something that I haven't been through the production documentation of and haven't been watching since I was 10. So anyway, let's see what happens. This is Sleep No More, a very interesting episode with a unique feel that, as Graham says, has received a certain amount of opprobrium, which I've never quite got. But let's get into that. I mean, this is, as I say, this is not a period of Doctor Who I've been, hugely keen to, jump to revisit. But it's only because I get so many rewards from going back to my childhood and things like that. And these episodes I've sort of watched and enjoyed, and I know I've got plenty of time to sort of go back and reappraise and reevaluate, and do a Capaldi marathon or a Moffat marathon or all those sorts of things, which I know I will do in a few years' time, and find gems anew and new perspectives and interesting insights and reappraisals and all of that. But I don't know. It's and I still think of these as quite new episodes, but of course they're not really new, are they? They're 8 years old, which I suppose is the equivalent when I was, I suppose my proper memories of 79, 80, of 81 of becoming a sort of real Doctor Who fan. So Doctor Who fans now, young Doctor Who fans who are going to grow up to be the likes of me. This is the equivalent of sort of mid-Pertwee for me, but I suppose Tom Baker did have an unnaturally long reign. But how lucky you are, young people. There's no young people listening to this. That the only way I could experience mid-Pertwee was if there was a Target novel of it and we had it. Whereas now this Sleep No More nestles in a sort of, on what looks like a TV advent calendar, which is just one page of the Doctor Who that is available to view at the touch of a button for free if you are a licence payer on the BBC's iPlayer. And actually, it's been announced this week as I record this. I think have I mentioned that? Oh God, I don't know now. That all of Doctor Who will be available, or most of Doctor Who's archive with supplementary material will be available in just a couple of weeks as I record this. Isn't that extraordinary? Anyway, this, I'm blasé about Modern Who being available. It's been there forever. And in fact, no, I didn't watch this for the first time on iPlayer. I watched this for the first time in a hotel at a Doctor Who event, at the big XL Arena event. I was in the hotel. I was doing on-stage interviews with the cast and crew. And so, in fact, I saw Mark Gatiss the day after this was broadcast. And so, I was very much in the thick of it and very lucky to be so. But let's see. But as I say, it's not a story I'm overly familiar with. I've got all this to sort of rediscover. So rediscovering it while I'm talking through it, it's going to be a nightmare. But that's what these podcasts are all about, and that is what you expect. And let's see if I make a hash of this, or if I manage to be entertaining for 45 minutes or so on a story I don't have much background trivia about, haven't pored over the paperwork of, and I've only seen probably a couple of times. So let's see if I can wake you up as Doctor Who sleeps no more. Let's hope I don't send you to what the characters don't get in this if we press play in 3, 2, 1. Well, I love this cold start. I mean, it's interesting. Graham is a proper journalist and a scholar and writer on film and TV, so knows very much about the sort of wider context of where Doctor Who exists in the pantheons of film and television. I'm a very one-track minded person. I always think with Rhys Shearsmith, I think he's a very versatile and brilliant performer, but there's something about the way he turns round, the sort of the hunch of his shoulders and the angle of his head, that always makes me recognize, even if he's under prosthetics or putting on a different voice, and he's very good at all that stuff and all the different characterizations, he has a very particular way of turning around. I don't know, that always seems to me to be the trademark. I think sometimes with Mark Gatiss there's a smile that you can sort of get. I'm just thinking of League of Gentlemen. We all have it. I have things that no matter what sort of accent or way of performing I think I've got a certain body language that gives me away. But with Rhys Shearsmith, I always think it's the way that he turns round. I don't know why. Anyway, the first time Doctor Who opens without an opening title sequence. It just has that little card that's got the letters, and it's got the letters of different characters and stuff. Now, I like that. I like this. I don't actually normally like narrated stories or stories that start, not stories, but episodes of TV shows that start in the future, because, I know a certain amount of things that are going to happen. If it's being narrated by Rasmussen, I know that, he's still alive and the others are probably dead. And I know the whole point of things like that is, well, how do they die then? Or there's a twist that they're not dead. And as we know, there's a twist about him. But I actually think it works with this because of the twists and because he's an unreliable narrator. An unreliable narrator is a legitimate storytelling device, but I tend to prefer more sort of purity in my storytelling. I don't like, because authors always set the rules, so tricks within the rules that you've made. It's a bit like, I feel this sometimes about some of Stephen Moffat's scripts. It's like, well, it's like playing cards with somebody who will tell you when you think you've proffered a good hand. No, it's round 8. Aces are high in round 8. You go, well, you didn't tell me that. Oh, well, that's the rules. You go, well, you can do anything you want then. I don't think this is the case here. I think it's a good use of the narrator, but it is something that I tend to be cautious about. As for the found footage, that's very interesting what Graham was saying about it being so many years after the Blair Witch Project had sort of made it to de rigueur. Blair Witch Project, by the way, I came to. I didn't go and see it. I think when it was the huge success. I'd read about it, of course, and I knew about it, and I knew that they'd set up internet pages for the actors and all the, and had them listed as dead and all of that. So I knew all the brouhaha around it, but I didn't see it at the cinema. We got it on video, and I thought I'd find it, or DVD. No, it might even have been video. No, it's probably DVD. No, it might have been video. Doesn't matter. And I remember thinking, it'll be, there's only 3 characters. I kind of know what happens. It's not, and it doesn't have the advantages of, filming properly and getting the camera up. But I thought it wouldn't float my boat, and I actually found it really effective and thought it was brilliant. And then, of course, I think around the time I watched it, everyone, started to turn around and go, well, it wasn't all that good anyway. But actually, I've seen it once, and I thought Blair Witch Project was very, very good. And the fact that Doctor Who's, so many years too late, as Graham mentions, didn't bother me, because I always see Doctor Who as kind of the plucky outsider to the mainstream, to cinema, to big budget American stuff. So even if it uses something 7 or 8 years late, I do sort of think, but Doctor Who's now doing that thing that successful thing did. And I always feel like it sort of gives Doctor Who a bit of a leg up, because Doctor Who is this sort of humble, plucky, cheeky doer. So, I don't mind if it apes a film 50 years later, if it apes a film that was really successful and it brings something different to what Doctor Who normally does. And a found footage thing within Doctor Who is a very, very new thing. If they'd done a found footage Doctor Who when Blair Witch Project was out, when Doctor Who wasn't on, so it couldn't have done. I would have, we'd have something to compare it to. But within the universe of Doctor Who, which exists, very much, in its own, in its own landscape. Never mind that the Blair Witch Project did this so many years earlier. This is Doctor Who stretching the bounds of what it can do, and then it does something within that is its own twist within the genre that it seems to be imposing, or bringing to the Doctor Who storytelling. It then goes, but Doctor Who, when it does this, is going to do it differently. And of course, found footage has this wonderful advantage that you can have the different film, film quality, the different camera styles. You've got the security cameras. You've got this, which is filming through a screen that they're looking into. which gives you different lighting states, and it feels like you're eavesdropping. But having this as the screen is very clever because it gives you a bit of a closer look at the Doctor. Whereas, if it was all found footage, if it was all sort of slightly from a distance, you might not get. So I think they've very cleverly woven it all together in that way. He has a wonderful face, Peter Capaldi. He really does have a Doctor's face. He's great. So I'm all for the found footage. I think it's great. And I'm all for the Aliens vibe. I mean, Aliens was a big deal. So this, and it means you're in a sort of recognisable place, but not necessarily. I mean, the first time Doctor Who tried to do Aliens, it was Dragonfire, and it's two people dressed in white, walking slowly around some not very good sets, and with very brightly lit. Now this is very, very important because that is Bethany Black, who is a friend of mine and a colleague, and was actually my driver when I toured Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf. When I was on tour, I bunged Beth a few quid, and she drove me, and so we spent a lot of time together. And she above and beyond really. And sure, has seen Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf more than anybody else. And we had a bit of an in with because Beth was not didn't really act, but Beth did comedy. And I think, and I've said this in my Who's Round with Beth, and it's something I would say to her, is that it did take a while, or I wouldn't say to find a voice, but for it to all come together. She had a long apprenticeship, I would say, was around a long time, and then suddenly just all the pieces fell into place. And then when Andy Pryor was casting for Cucumber and Banana, got a phone call from Beth saying, "Oh, there's this Russell T Davies series, and they're looking for a trans actor." Beth came over and we went through the scenes, and I say I did a little bit, but it was mostly Cheryl Lee, my partner, and they spent a good old day, getting Beth in good shape for that first audition. And she had a really good first audition, and then flew and got the part. And of course, whilst doing Cucumber Banana, talked to Andy Pryor and mentioned that she loved Doctor Who, and of course Andy Pryor casts Doctor Who, so I think then he had her in the back of his mind, and when this part came up, he got her in, and it's a good fit. And she came to this house, actually pretty much where I'm sitting now, except this didn't exist because there was a little kitchen extension that we then knocked down and built round because the wheelchair didn't fit in it or anything. But it was pretty much where I'm sitting now that Beth came round and said, just to let you know, I've got a part in Doctor Who. I can't tell you anything about it, but it's I can't remember exactly what she said, but she was sort of saying that the nature of the part was quite a big deal, not in terms of its continuity or anything like that. And I think what she was alluding to was that because it's a cloned species, she could return, again and again and again and again, and that's. I mean, there are other sort of clone species. But anyway, there was an excitement of having done it, of being about to do it, an excitement about the nature of the part because it did promise perhaps potentialities beyond. But that might have just been, a symptom of just being generally excited anyway, and you get excited in all sorts of different ways. And she did, bless her, actually offer to take me to the set, and to watch a bit of filming, but I did that. No, if I'm gonna be through the doors of Doctor Who, I want to be there under my own steam, and so I still haven't watched an episode being filmed. But I'm very proud of Beth. I'm very proud that my mate ended up in the show, and is very good. And it's a good, it's a good part. It's not just because there's no guarantee. I know actors have finally got their audition for Doctor Who or whatever, and they go, and it's like a scene, and am I supposed to be excited by that? In fact, when I was in a makeup thing about a year ago, one of the actors said, "Oh, my mate's he's just been offered an audition for Doctor Who, but it's like 3 lines, and he's like, oh, I'm really excited, I want to do Doctor Who, but is my opportunity to be in Doctor Who just going to be 3 lines?" So the fact that Beth and some really good actors have had one scene in Doctor Who, you know what I mean? So the fact that the part that she got was one that's pretty much all the way through it is great. I don't recall. I mean, and it's I love, by the way, the fact that they have the song Mr. Sandman. I love Mr. Sandman as a song. I love an a cappella. I love a barbershop quartet. I love all of that sort of thing. And of course, it's a very Doctor Who-y thing to go, let's take a thing that is sort of part of our furniture. It's whether it's a crack in the wall, whether it's a gas mask, but here the song Mr. Sandman, I think everybody's come across it under some circumstance. I'm not even sure where I first heard it, but it's one of those ones that and to turn that, a sort of jolly, what era is it, 50s a cappella ditty that you associate with almost with advertising jingles, and turns that into part of the horror landscape of the storytelling, I think is a very Doctor Who-y idea. Yeti on your Lewin tooting Beck, for 4 singers bebopping to a song that we know. So here's Reece Shearsmith. I did like Graham's comment at the beginning about how he's influencing Matthew Sweet's choice of spectacles. And I like this as an attempt to, make this society that they've created have its own bits and bobs. So may the gods smile on you. I seem to recall everybody seems to say quite a lot. And the ethnic makeup of the guest cast, it shouldn't be remarkable really, but it is. It shows positive thinking, and it shows an attempt to create an expanded universe that has societies with makeups that differentiate them from the sort of spaceship crews that we grew up on. All of that is great, and I think the guest cast are all good. I think they are. Yeah, the guest cast are good. Are the characters? I wonder if the characters are differentiated enough. I mean, there's a real effort with having, Beth as this grunty clone, but there's not an awful lot then done with that idea. I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that, of why this character is one of these. And everybody else isn't. I mean, he's got the thing about fancying Chopra, and she saves him later, doesn't she? But here we get to the sort of perverted science aspect of the script, which is a wonderfully Doctor Who-y thing, and has its roots in Frankenstein. It's interesting because it's Mark Gatiss doing a futuristic sci-fi, which is not what we're used to him having. Of course, Chopra is the one that doesn't do the I'm not sleeping stuff. So he has his own. No, so they are differentiated actually, quite nicely. Sleep that knits up the ravelled sleep of care, the death of each day's life. Sore labour's balm, balm of hurt minds, chief nourisher in life's great feast. Yes, that is from the Scottish play. I have played the Scottish King. I do like that joke that I can't remember who did it now, but somebody was talking about Gordon Ramsay and referred to him as the Scottish chef. We don't say his name. It's unlucky. But of course, there's the theatrical tradition that you don't mention the name of the Scottish play because it is unlucky, and I'm either superstitious or pretentious. Depends on which you would prefer. There's a gossamer thin line betwixt the two. The fact that I use the word betwixt suggests to me it's probably pretension. But I've played that Scottish king. It was the play that made me want to become an actor. Sleep no more. Oh, well, I have to say it. If I'm quoting, I think I'm allowed. But is it sleep no more? Macbeth doth murder sleep, the innocent sleep, yes. And then sleep that revels, that knits up the revel sleep of care, blah de blah de blah. Chiefs that Peter Capaldi has just said, chief nourisher in life's feast. He says, still it cried, sleep no more to all the house. Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more. So that's where the title comes from. And I like the idea. It's quite a Stephen Moffat-y idea, isn't it? I can imagine when Mark came up with the idea of going, what if sleep dust is a baddie? You go, yeah, Stephen Moffat's going to love that. This is the guy that does cracks in the wall and statues and those little bits of dust you see in light streams. The Vashon Narada. All of that is very Moffat-y, and I'm a sucker for all of that. The Yeti on the loo in Tooting Bec, the plastic daffodils, the everyday thing turned disastrous. One, it's cheap, and Doctor Who is at its best. I think it's when it goes, I'm going to try and do the biggest monster ever. Is when it goes, I'm going to try and make the simplest thing really, really terrifying. And I think Sleep Dust as a killer is great. Is it called Room? I actually think Room is that the weepy bit, and then dried room, RHEUM. Room is sleep dust, and we all know sleep dust, and we never really talk about it. It's always something that we, as a kid, I remember, what's this? Oh, sleep dust. It's because you've been asleep. So when you see sleep dust in people's eyes, and because it's a thing that you have, probably have more as a kid, really, don't you? It's something I associate sleep dust with being a kid, even though I have it now, and I'm always picking it out of Bernard's eyes. Cockapoos get it. Bernard, you could be the Sandman. You could have me killed. But Bernard is over there asleep. His mum is out tonight partying, and I had to look for Bernard earlier because he'd gone and he wasn't sleeping no more. He was sleeping quite happily in a place that he doesn't normally sleep, which suggests to me he was not happy. He's a bit, and he's not quite himself. I suspect if I was out partying and his mum was here, he'd be having a right old time. Anyway, this I like this because it's Paul Courtney Hughes, isn't it, playing Deep Ando, who I think is very natural, and I seem to recall you think he's going to get killed straight away, and actually he doesn't, and it makes you think, oh, is he going to, because he's been separated, that kind of suggests, oh, this guy's going to get boshed pretty quickly. But this is good because this is the sort of, again, I love Doctor Who making an everyday thing deadly. This is computer says no, but to a lethal level, and does it makes him sing the song, doesn't it? And I like that. I love that perversion of I love that, the computer doing it. I think there's something about a song not being sung, or being sung flatly, or being sung badly, or in this case being sung because he's getting scared and he wants to get through, that suddenly makes that is a perversion of something that is normally innocent and dotty and fun. And this is really nicely directed. The snatches of the monsters, and he's got in, and you go, oh, that surprised me. I thought he was going to get killed, and that was really nicely directed. All the snatches and all this reflection stuff, because of course it's the reflection of his. Even though we discover later that it's not from cameras, but we thought he'd escaped. So that was a great sequence. I thought that was an excellent sequence. the first of them to die, of course, you go, that means more people are going to die, which is, I suppose the advantage. But for me, in things where people are getting picked off one by one, I want to. It's weird. I want to strangely kind of have an idea that in my own head who I think is going to die and who isn't, and then if it changes from that, then that's where the shocks come in, or the pleasant surprises or whatever, and the drama is, oh god, they're going to kill. Oh, they haven't killed them, which I think worked very well with Deep Ando there, which is again why I on instinct sort of resist the narrator-led narrative, and that's not the fault of this episode or this way of storytelling. It's entirely me. But what I like about this episode is that I actually don't resist it as much as I would under some other circumstances. And actually what it does with it takes away the things that are the cause of my initial instinct to shrink away from it. It's nicely directed, this. It's especially as I was going to say you don't get too many looks at the monsters, but actually you got quite a lot there. Oh, and then has it just killed Reece Shearsmith? So again, that's a pretty good twist, because you go, how the hell is he narrating it when he's just been killed by the sleep dust beast? And that's a brilliant effect as well, the sort of dust, the dust falling apart. And the handheld stuff is all great. You don't see handheld in Doctor Who that much because, of course, it's supposed to be a helmet cam, isn't it? And here's an interesting thing, and I hope this doesn't sound wrong. I'm from the countryside in the middle of nowhere. We didn't see or meet many people from ethnic minorities. There was one black person in Ludlow, and he was called Black Terry, and the people of Chinese heritage ran the Chinese takeaway in the chip shop, and there was a couple of families, but and they did the two chip shops. It was all the cliched stuff, but this was the 1970s, early 80s, so all the cliches you'd expect from somebody who is not a child of the city. So now I was brought up with a very liberal outlook, and no racism of any kind would be tolerated, etc., etc., etc. But of course, you have your subconscious and unconscious expectations about people who are unfamiliar, say, and I remember the first time being quite surprised when we went to Scotland and we went into a shop and there was an Asian shopkeepers with a Scottish accent, and I went, oh yes, of course. And you go, oh yes, of course. But it was dissonant to me because the only Asian people I knew of or met were either people who were from where I was from, so had my accent, or had accents from where their families had originated from, foreign accents, if you like. But the idea of them having different regional accents because of my own subconscious prejudices is wrong, but programming and familiarities, that all contributes to sort of othering somebody that might not look like you, in the way that all of the kids at school that I was with, were from the same background. So the fact that Elaine Tan playing the lead here has a Geordie accent, I think again is just one of those things that shows progress in how in how we portray people. Because I remember working with a whole load of actors of Chinese origin, and they were told, we either have to do the Chinese accent or we have to do RP, and regional accents in characters of colour. You find them in soap operas, but not necessarily in science fiction, because science fiction still has that obsession with RP, because we sort of expect our monsters and our aliens to sound Shakespearean, because otherwise it maybe anchors them geographically too much elsewhere, which means that we therefore see RP as the norm and everything else as an aberration away from that. It's all very interesting about how all of that stuff works and what it suggests to us. So it's a little thing that you've got, somebody who looks like Elaine Tan but speaks with a Geordie accent, I think just broadens the landscape of representation in little subtle ways that may not seem like rocket science to you listening if you're younger than me and from a city, but to somebody from my background, it's a quite little bit of sort of revolutionary in broadening that landscape, so that somebody like me, watching Doctor Who, the current 11-year-old equivalent of me, in the middle of nowhere, who might not encounter people from different ethnic backgrounds, hearing somebody from a different ethnic background but with a Geordie accent. I mean, the first time I heard a Geordie accent actually was when Auf Wiedersehen Pet was on the telly. So not only did I not see people from ethnic backgrounds, I never. The first time I heard a Scouse accent was when Brookside started. I mean, we had a very sheltered upbringing, but television was a window to the world, which is why Brookside was so revolutionary, because it showed working class Liverpool lives very authentically. And Auf Wiedersehen Pet with its Geordie builders, and although it also had a Scouser, didn't it, and a Brummie, it was very kind of bloke from Bristol. But all of that, those accents, were quite rare certainly in leading roles in television when I was growing up. Now, of course, there's massive progress has been made, and so I might be sounding like a relic. I'm only making the observation because it is still something that chimes with me slightly as a sort of move forward, in a way that maybe if you're younger than me and from a more cosmopolitan background, you just go, well, that's just normal. And if so, then that's very good. But that is something that has changed from when I was younger. And so I as I said, that is something that I rather enjoy. It seems fresh and novel, in the same way that Alien, the film, just had the characters, when they're dressed in their civvies, not dressed in silver spangly spacesuits, and the engineers were guys with jobs, rather than space engineers from the planet Vex or whatever. So gosh, I didn't realise we'd got quite as far through it as we had. I think maybe because I thought I would run out of things to say. Although my segue into the the Geordie space character probably took up more time than I'd intended it to, because I was worried about my phraseology, etc. I love anything where characters are trapped and one character punches the other one out in order to save their lives. Rogan does it to the Doctor in the Ark in Space. I love that. Doctor, is there something sort of slightly Freudian about the way the Doctor is emerging? Or is that just my... Yeah, there is. There's not. It's just but yes. Anyway, it does look slightly Freudian. Anyway, I just the same way as I like, the character gets mortally wounded and decides to crash the spaceship into the big alien spaceship so that everyone else could make their escape or whatever. When characters are trapped and somebody's like, I like the wounded, oh, just leave me. And I also like the what Beth has just done. She punches Chopra and walks through the fire, hasn't she, in order to save him. And look, she's a bit knackered. I'm sure Beth told me that she'd gone back and done the part again in ADR that she'd done a way of speaking that they decided not to use, and so that I think all her lines are done in post. So I'd be interested to know how she did it. Actually, need to find out. But anyway, nice burn makeup, and I do like the anything that involves a noble sacrifice. And I like this because she gets to sort of raise the thing, doesn't she? Go, ah! Great death, Beth. Beth has since done a show, which is a brilliant title because Beth is the first trans actor, performer, actress. Now, my partner Shirley is calls herself an actor. And I know some female actors who call themselves actresses, but Shez is a female actor who calls herself actor. So I don't know what Beth prefers, actor or actress. So should we say performer? The first trans performer to have ever been in Doctor Who. And so her show was called Beth Becomes Her. She did a one-person show, Beth Becomes Her, which is a very, very good title, and has been going from strength to strength. In fact, she did her hour-long show at Excess Malarkey, my club, earlier this year. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it. But good old Beth, still going strong, and made a bit of history with Doctor Who. But, you know, a lot of Beth's education with Doctor Who was me lending. I'm sure I lent Beth all of the BBC, you know, soundtracks I had of the the missing episodes when they were brought out on CD with the narration. I'm sure I lent her lots of my DVDs, and I think at the time even VHSs, because it was that long ago. But yeah, Beth and I have talked many, many long hours into the night, driving from gig to gig, and I look back now and go, God, that was an awfully big time commitment. So thanks, Beth. And who would have thought? Well, you were driving me around doing my Doctor Who show. In fact, I was with Beth when I found out that Verity Lambert had died, because I'd just done my Doctor Who show and came off, I think, and that news was there, because I think I'd done it in the day at a school. I don't know why. Anyway, so yeah, Beth. So the fact that she went from that to actually being in the show, what a journey! Fantastic. Haven't really said anything about Clara in this, and I don't know why. As I say, it's really difficult to sort of talk about the ins and outs of the story when I'm having to talk by the nature of what this is. I do think Peter Capaldi has a wonderful face. Look at those eyes. Anyone that can sort of do that kind of eyebrow acting automatically has an advantage as a doctor. He also has that slightly sort of, he started to move a bit like Peter Cushing at times, hasn't he? That slightly sort of side to side sort of body language, and I like the fact, and he's got this weird sort of mix of old and modern dress as well, hasn't he? He's eschewed the the tie and the flowery cravatty kind of stuff for something much more sort of casual, but it still has that sort of timeless wardrobe adventurer thing about him. And of course, the big twist is that the found footage is not actually. We don't have helmet cams. Makes you then go, WTF, as I think the kids say. And I like the fact that Chopra gets his little sort of subplot, and I think I'd been conditioned to feel, because Beth, I'm not going to go 474, has sacrificed herself to save him. You kind of think, oh well, maybe that's bought him his safe place in the plot, and that he's going to get to do his bit. Otherwise, why would we lose 474? So it still feels like, oh, he's gonna, he's gonna get his own sort of plot here, or we will have him hook up with the others at some point. But I suppose we should have guessed, because neither the Doctor nor Clara ended up with him, that maybe that might happen. So actually all 474 did was buy him a bit of time, which is rather sad, because I think you'd be slightly pissed off if you'd sacrificed your life for a guy to realise that actually it only buys him 5 pages. But yes, we have the twist that the found footage is not the cameras. And I remember, I think, when I first saw it, going, oh, well, I feel slightly ripped off by that. Why do a found footage adventure if it's not actually found footage? But then the next time I saw it and the story coalesced for me a little bit, you go, oh no, that makes perfect sense, and it is not just a gimmick to make the found footage not found footage. It's actually an important part of the story. It's the whole sort of content of Rasmussen Sandmason's plot is to have this, well, which makes it slightly more than Blair Witch Project, doesn't it? It almost makes it like The Ring, which I think is a wonderful movie. Ringu, the original is called, which always amuses me just because it sounds like Bingu. Map map. But of the, don't watch this. And of course, as anybody, whenever anybody says, don't look at that, you look at it. You're not supposed to see that. Our curiosity drives us, and that is where then the fear of looking at something you shouldn't look at, but also fear of transgression leads to a bit of excitement, and that excitement makes you feel a bit invigorated if you do transgress. So it's that curious thing, isn't it, of why fear is exciting, because they both provoke adrenaline, and why the forbidden is all the more tantalizing. Even if you're told, don't look at this or you will die, you sort of go, but if I don't look, I won't know what it is. And if I look and I don't die, that's a victory. Whereas if I don't look and I don't die, well, I wasn't going to die anyway, so I'll always be left wondering. It's a wonderful sort of lure and temptation. Temptation, of course, is something is tempting. That's more than just you wanting something, isn't it? You being tempted. Temptation brings with it a promise of something that perhaps you don't get unless you transgress. If I'm to tempt you, I'm to try to promise you to do something you sort of know is wrong. That's what temptation really is, and that is much more interesting a feeling to experience, especially with storytelling, than just giving you something that you want. Being tempted by something isn't the same as being given something that you want. There's an extra transgressiveness. There's an extra allure to it. I love Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton. I think Inside Number 9 is one of the consistently best acted, best written, and most interesting programs that's been on telly in the past 10 years. But I don't think either of their parts in Doctor Who have been parts that have shown them at their best. He's not quite as natural a fit as the sort of happy scientist as he is in other roles. I don't think. And the same, I did feel the same with Steve Pemberton in Silence in the Library. I think they're both brilliant, and I think because I think they're both brilliant, I was maybe expecting more. So maybe it's me going, oh well, it's they're both among my favourite performers, and now they're in my favourite show. I'm going, oh, is that all they've given them? So, we can be victims of our own expectations, really. And the Sandman is definitely going to be this is very Doctor Who to me. Marauding sand beast monsters, flashing lights, trying to shut the monsters out, whilst that terrific, bebop, fun, ad jingly type song is playing. That's a great piece of Doctor Who, dissonance there, and juxtaposition and all of those things that make Doctor Who super duper. Yes, this is where we get a little bit meta, and it is a very distinctive ending. It ends unlike any Doctor Who story. It sort of brings attention to its own artifice. I think if it was a little clearer at the end, this would be but I love the ending. I love the melty face ending. In fact, I think that's my favourite moment. And I remember feeling genuinely chilled by it when it happened. So I hope that happens this time. But I remember being slightly confused by the rest of it. And I think considering it now, this idea that the story is going, this is like a story. It has plot holes. Found footage things never quite make sense. This is inherently flawed in terms of its storytelling, because this is actually a contrivance, it turns out, of Rasmussen's making, because he's tried to keep us watching with excitement and with deaths and with action and with in order that we, the viewer, then become the next victims, as it were, which is a brilliant idea. But it also becomes a little bit meta. It's also going, we are acknowledging the artificial nature of the stories that Doctor Who tells every week, and it even has the Doctor looking at the camera, which is bold and daring. It's odd; it doesn't come across as bold and daring as it perhaps might be. And is that because of the way that it has to be filmed? Is that because they're tonally not as adventurous as they might be? I don't know. Because talking about it, of the fact that it does, I love this whole thing of going, and I can feel the tickle in the corner of my eye. I think that's superb. That and this is beautifully arched, sort of, the unreliable narrator is going, yeah, I put in bits to keep you watching, because and this, I think this is superb. I think this is proper, and he's great at this. Look at that sort of slightly tired mouth thing that he has. I think is really good. Like, sort of, it's quite zombie-like, and the treatment of the voice as well. But that thing where the eye has come away, and that's like all me together. It's like a sort of slightly sort of strokey palsy, parody of the way that we speak. And you've got something in your eye. Yeah, I mean, that is so good. So why? That's really grotesque. And it's a Doctor Who story that ends on that note, on a kind of, I think that's really unusual. I think that's really bold. So why? Because Beth, who is hugely successful, has a very glass half empty sense of humour. So whenever she, it was an ambition of hers to be in Doctor Who, and of course, so she goes, yeah, I fulfilled that ambition, but then she goes, but it is the story with the third lowest score on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb or whatever. I didn't realise it was that sort of badly thought of, because it certainly didn't feel that at the time. It felt, and especially in a season full of sort of two-parters or ones that were related to the ongoing arc. To me, it was nice to have an island of a story that just sort of stood on its own 2 feet. I do think it's. I do think part of the boldness of it means that, the reason you don't normally end stories, and certainly Doctor Who stories, in the way that this one does, is because it does leave you going, oh, is that it? Is what? Where's what? How? Hang on. But actually, how many episodes of Doctor Who are there? And the fact that you've got one that does that, I think is a really nice idea. So I think all of those ingredients are good. As I say, I'm still slightly confused about the sense of it all at the ending, but I think that's acceptable, because I love that final speech to camera and the slowly disintegrating humanity of Rasmussen, the sand avatar of the Rasmussen avatar of the Sand Beast or whatever. So that's definitely going to be one of my. We have 5 things, don't we? We have 5 things. Well, I think one has to be the found footage conceit. I think that really works. I think it's interesting within the the landscape of Doctor Who. It means we have a story that, for once, doesn't have an opening title sequence. Amazing. They've done that since, of course. I think any attempt to... And it doesn't seem gimmicky to me. I think any attempt to mix it up a little bit. We want Doctor Who to be the same. But in fact, Doctor Who was much more different story to story in the olden days, because there wasn't a house style in much the same way. So, directors could come and they could hire a different incidental musician if they wanted to, and they could use different ways of filming it if they wanted to. There wasn't that same pressure of going, well, no, if people are channel hopping, they need to know exactly what it is they're watching if they happen upon it. You don't want to have a totally different visual style, lest people with their 2-second concentration span goes, oh, I thought it was Doctor Who. This isn't Doctor Who. I'm going to turn over. Whereas so in the modern television landscape, where programs are expected to sort of be consistent, for those reasons, to keep the sort of channel hopper, I think it's bold and excitingly bold and different to have that, and it's a great way of telling a sci-fi story, and it gives you that sense of being eavesdropped upon. I like anything filmed through a sort of security camera, but of course, if you were just filmed through security cameras, you would have problems with getting the performances from the lovely close-ups that you need of good actors. But having that shot through the computer screen and it turns out it wasn't helmet cams, but that's what we're led to believe initially, means that you do get the actor close-ups as well. But then you also get the handheld stuff. So I think the found footage conceit is a great start. And a great central premise. The Sandman singing. I mentioned it during I love the song anyway. I love that kind of music. But to have that cheesy, cheery, boppity boppity boo music, a cappella, one in space surroundings, in futuristic space surroundings, to have a sort of period a cappella song there is, it has a dissonance about it, but then to have that, those cheery pong pongs as people are dying and doors are steel doors are slamming down and monsters are lurching out of the darkness is a wonderfully Doctor Who juxtaposition between the cheery and the fun and the crazy and the terribly scary, and Doctor Who always does that well, clashing two different things together to a dissonant effect, and so I love that. It's a great song anyway, but the fact that it was able to do one of the things that Doctor Who does so well is my number 2. My number 3 is going to be the fact that it's sleep. The idea that sleep, something that is common to us all, has tried to be, well, because there's a bit of comment there about what we're going to do in the future. What else are we going to monetize or try and ban or try and change in order to become more profitable or more efficient and all of that sort of thing. And the more we do that, the further we move away from what is human. And actually that is the theme of Macbeth. What if you upset nature? The whole thing about Macbeth is upsetting the natural order. There's so much imagery in it about harvesting and bounty. There, if I grow, the harvest is your own, says Banquo, and what Macbeth does when he kills. Oh, I've said it now, but I'm sort of quoting under. Oh, whatever. I was going to say something unlucky might happen to me. Oh, welcome to my life and career. It's full of them. So I don't think I've got anything to jinx just at the moment. Maybe I have. Don't jinx anything. I'm sorry, theatre gods, but I'm going to be saying the name of the character because I'm talking about the play and the character and the fact that it is a play about the murder of King Duncan. When he kills King Duncan, King Duncan's horses eat each other. The skies go crazy. The weather goes mad. Nature is knocked off balance, and Macbeth loses his ability to sleep because nature is the balm of hurt minds. It's nourisher of life's feast. Sleep is our as our respite. Macbeth in killing Duncan gets no more respite, and nature turns against him, and I always imagine, all the greenery in his castle dies and withers away. That's what I would do if I was to direct it. You'd go from being very verdant to being very sort of spidery and blackened and dead, and that's what sort of happens here in taking away sleep. You've messed with nature, and when you mess with nature, you create, either chemical waste or whatever, or you destroy the environment, or in this case, you weaponize sleep dust. And that's a great idea. And again, the very simple idea. I mean, so simple nobody had thought of it. Those are the best, aren't they? Of going, let's have sleep dust, which is the thing kids know about, and make it deadly. Beautiful, wonderful synthesis of sort of Moffat and Gatiss preoccupations. So sleep and sleep dust, that whole central theme and premise. Brilliant idea. Number 4 is the ending. I love that speech that Reece Shearsmith does. I love the fact that he gradually uses his humanity as he reveals that actually the story we've been watching is not a story, it is a contrivance. That's very meta, and actually a trap, and that you, viewer, you've got something in the corner of your eye. You have done the thing. You've watched the Ring video. You have said Candyman. You have been lured into doing the thing, which is going to be the architect, the facilitator of your own destruction, of you being overwhelmed by the malevolence presence that has contrived this story in order to capture your soul. And I just think it's a brilliant visual. I think it's very well acted. I think even the way that they do the sound, and the fact that it's an unusual ending for a Doctor Who story, that it ends on that sort of dour note of, hey viewer, we've just killed you. It's bold, it's original, it's inventive. I think that's great. Why don't people like it? I will be interested to see what people say in response, because I'm not denying the fact that this is not a much loved Doctor Who story. I do think I can talk a better game of it than it actually plays out, but it's odd because I don't think the direction is bad at all. I think the direction is excellent in places. I think they make a real virtue of the found footage stuff, and I think the photography is excellent considering the limitations that it has. But often, and I've said this a lot about Doctor Who, limitations lead to creativity, and creativity leads to more interesting ways of storytelling. And I think all of that is there. So why is it that it's not? Because it isn't. It's not an episode I rush to watch again. And the time before this that I'd seen it, I had, I'd sort of had to sort of chew. It was a bit like chewing the cud, which is weird because there's nothing. There's loads of stuff in it that I like, but as I say, I sort of like it as in theory perhaps more than I do in practice. That's interesting, isn't it? And yet I don't think it's badly made. So how peculiar is that? Maybe it's just a less than the sum of its parts. I don't know. And the 5th thing, it's going to be a very personal thing, is the presence of my mate Bethany Black as 474, because it feels it's close enough to connect me with it, that I have a bit of a thrill, and that of course I had a bit of a lead up to it. I mean, Beth didn't offer me any spoilers. And I certainly didn't ask for any. So, but there were little bits dropped in, and I knew when she was going to do it, and then I knew when she'd done it, and she talked to me when she was building up to doing it, and obviously she told me what the part she was playing was, and you had written it and stuff like that. And she told me that it was a found footage thing, and then afterwards she said, what it had been like, and blah. And then we spoke about it again, and I who's rounded her after it had been on. So. Yeah, it has a slight a sort of unique flavour for me, and that I went through it from a particular perspective, from before it had been made to during it been made, after it had been made, and then watching it, and then the way that I sort of consider it is when I think of Sleep No More, the first thing I think about it is, and even though I know Mark Gatiss, I think I've known, but the way I've known Beth since before Beth, if you like, was Mark Gatiss I first met after he was a very successful person. So again, that's a different dynamic and a different relationship. But somebody from my life, and particularly the fact that she was so associated with Moths Ate My Doctor Who scarf, then ends up in the show. It gives me a nice sort of link to it, but not so close that I can't still be sort of have that lovely distance of being a fan and in awe of the program, and not too familiar with it, and that it, I've still got that. It's not like it's that old thing, It's so it gives me a closeness to it, but not an over familiarity. So I like all of that does, which is a very personal one of my 5 things, and is the 5th of them, which Graham watches. But he might choose Beth and the casting of Beth and what that represents, in which case I will take that point. But let's see what Graham Kibble-White's 5 things are. Remember, mine are the found footage conceit, the song, Oh Mr. Sandman, and its use, the way it is deployed throughout the story and the different effects that creates, the fact that it is sleep and the weaponizing of sleep dust, the ending, that final sequence with Reece Shearsmith talking to the camera and becoming a dust zombie. It's the voice. It's the way the voice sort of goes like that. Brilliant. It's what is it? A grotesque parody of the human form. Tom Baker says, doesn't he, in the Seeds of Doom about Winlet? And anything that is a grotesque parody of either our form or our speech, where it's sort of recognisable, but it's a slightly, almost deathly version. It's like he is a sort of dead person speaking. I think is really effectively and quite creepily done. I think it's one of the few sort of genuinely creepy, slightly hairs on the back of your neck stand on end moments of modern Who. Now, that's not to say it doesn't necessarily have more of the, but for me as an old man, do you know what I mean? I know there's lots of creepy and scary bits for people who are kids, but I don't get scared much anymore. I'm still a little scared of the dark, but anyway, but not at watching telly. But that did genuinely creep me out a bit. And I was watching it on a laptop or maybe it was on a telly. It was in a hotel room at the Excel Arena. And I did see Mark the next day, which was nice. I was able to say I thought the ending was great. Because that had been the big that had really got me. That night. And the final thing is the casting of Bethany Black. So those are my 5. What are Graham's? And here he is as a pencil drawing in a virtual recreation of the spaceship set. Or of a spaceship set. And let's see what he's got to say.
You must not watch this, says Gagan, which is such an audacious call to action for a TV show. You can't not after that. And throughout his very good company, his role changes over the 45 minutes from some innocent in peril who seems to represent what the stakes are in the story to a smart-ass dad watching along with you at home. Specifically the bit where he points out that his character couldn't have died if he's here narrating it all to you. And finally to a Zaroff-level baddie who's got one over on the Doctor and made you a patsy in his plans.
That's so, yes. So it's the unreliable narrator, I guess, is the first choice, which, I mean, I kind of almost figured I'd chosen, but actually I hadn't. And I think it's perhaps because of my natural resistance to that I explained, even though it doesn't manifest itself in that way in this. He's very good, Graham, isn't it? That was a very eloquent and perceptive précis of why that is so effective. And I love the idea of him being like you're watching it with your dad and he's saying all the things that your dad says, which makes it work on another level entirely. I could tell Graham is going to be a very good correspondent here. So, but I didn't choose that. So it's 1-0 to Graham.
The scene where we first come across the Doctor and Clara represents a lot that's clever about Sleep No More. This is a story that's giving the show a run out on a different set of rails, and so we meet the Doctor and Clara as strangers, rather than in our usual role as their complicit, silent companion. First we hear their conversation floating down a corridor, then we see her from the back, and finally him. They're not given their usual hero shots, no imbued stature, no definitive take on what's happening. It makes it all the more enjoyable when they still rise to dominate proceedings, an affirmation that the Time Lord doesn't need an editorial advantage.
Oh, he is clever. I love that. The Time Lord doesn't need an editorial advantage. How brilliantly put. I want Graham to be the guest on all of these now. Oh, I wonder if I can get him to do a classic series one. That's really clever. And that hadn't occurred. Well, I mean, I think I was talking about something else when the Doctor and Clara entered. I think I'd gone into this one going, if I can find something to talk about. I talked about Blair Witch for ages, didn't I? Don't cut yourself short, even if something's happening, because you might run out of things to say during this one. So I did talk over the Doctor and Clara's entrance, but that is very true. The fact that we don't enter the story with them, that they come in and that others see them as guest characters in Doctor Who always see them, but we don't because we're usually accompanying them, is a great way of flipping the dynamic on its head in a way, and making us approach the story in a way that is unusual. And it reminds me, now that Graham has pointed that out, of an episode of The X-Files that I enjoyed very much, that the title of I can't remember, but I remember that the guest star is Chad E. Bonella, who is in Final Destination, and you see it from the monster's point of view, essentially, that he's trying to get on with his business and these annoying FBI people keep turning up, and it's a lovely episode. I think I've only seen it the once. I've not seen a lot of the X-Files more than once, but I always remember that one because you find yourself kind of on the monster's side almost, and it shows the heroes as to what they're like to the guest characters, whereas normally the guest characters are new to us and we're with the heroes. Yes, they're de facto silent companions, whereas here the heroes are interlopers into another set of characters' environments, and all the and all the strange and upsetting as a result of that. But then, as Graham says, and yet they still manage to emerge as the heroes and the hero figures who work it all out, and take centre stage by the end, which is a testament to them as characters and to the fact that Mark can change the dynamic and change the way that the characters come into the story, but not betray their role and their stature in the series. Yeah, good choice, well put. Oh dear, do you know what I thought? I'd chosen such sort of universal things that I might do well on this one. I'm not going to think I might get one.
After Clara is released from the Morpheus machine, viewers, and particularly Smart-Ass Dad, might realise that we're now seeing some of the action from her point of view. Upon first watching, I'll confess I put it down to directorial pragmatism. Certain shots were required, so they were letting the logic of the POV thing hang a little loose. But it's not. This is a clue. It's a plot point. It's eventually made clear that this is an indication that something has changed. It's the kind of thing Rasmussen was counselling us to look out for at the very start. We'll get it again with his on-screen glitches. In this way, Sleep No More is a game, engaging with us in a fashion that's wholly unlike other Doctor Who.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah, and it is bold because having come up with the Blair Witch conceit, they could have just kept it at that. But not only did they mix it up, which I remember thinking, oh, well, if you're going to do found footage, why have you mixed up? But of course, because it's important to the plot. It's not just a gimmick to muck about with the gimmick. It's all organic to what they're trying to do. And yeah, the fact that what could seem like glitches or directorial pragmatism, beautifully put, is actually are deliberate pieces of storytelling, is applaudable and bold and imaginative, and superb. Well done. The fact that it's bold enough to go, I'm going to do this thing that some viewers, and especially modern viewers, who are always on the lookout to see a chink in the storyteller's armour in order to get one up on them, which I think is a very odd drive. But it's because we've been bred to sort of look for mistakes and bloopers and all of that sort of thing, as if that somehow makes us better than the program makers. Which, as I say, is a really odd ambition as a viewer, because it's like people who come to stand up to deliberately wreck it. You go, no, we expect a certain goodwill of you because there's a pact. We all know that this is artificial, that this is an artificial discourse or an artificial construct in order to get to a truth or in order to provoke emotions that feel like real life, but in a containable way. But you've got to come with us. Now we can't take the piss. We can't expect too much of you. But don't be on the lookout. If you're straining hard to see a boom mic and you see one flash for a second, you go, ah ha ha ha, whilst there's somebody brilliantly acting underneath it. I mean, if that's what you're after, great. But I've nothing to say to you. Whereas yes, but as Graham says, you could clock it and go, oh, okay, they haven't really been consistent with that. But then they turn around to go, no. We did that on purpose. What you thought was a mistake, we did on purpose. So it's very boldly playing with what is acceptable and what is not. And I do like things that are meta, because I think I like behind the scenes, and I like references in text. I like stuff because I'm drawn to learn how things were made and what inspired them, and their origins and their sources and all of that sort of thing, as we all are, because we love the making of and all of that sort of thing. When sometimes when that stuff blends and molds itself and around that idea that we're aware of the pieces that put these things together, when it occasionally draws real attention to them, then plays with them, but then integrates that into them, I think that's very, very clever. I'm not going to get one. I really thought I might do well on this one.
He had a theory, says Rasmussen, referring to the Doctor's cogitations on what the Sandmen might be. His thoughts that the monsters developed from sleep gunk and never once stood up. In the same way, when the space station's gravity shields go down, he claims he's in charge. And seeing him from inside the story, that just seems ridiculous. It makes you wonder how many other Doctor Who adventures have rested unquestionably on the lead character's summations. The hokum that they've spun that's never challenged or exposed to any rigour.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's way beyond my pay grade, but very smart. Yeah, I suppose that is all about how well. No, that's really interesting. That has the Doctor solved stories before, and it's actually all been bravado and charisma and technobabble. Yeah, it's doing interesting things, isn't it? I want Graham to write the Black Archive on Sleep No More. I want to know more.
As the Doctor and Clara make their escape, having achieved nothing other than getting from point A to point B and back to point A again, he has a small moment of insight, pondering that everything they've just experienced was almost all for effect, like it was a story. I particularly love that moment, having the Doctor experience the guest character's lot in every other Doctor Who tale. He's bundled in, he has no agency, and he doesn't get access to the overall plot, because for once it's not the Doctor's show. If Sleep No More did have a traditional opening title sequence, it would have been fitting to give the big 3D font to Reece Shearsmith.
Yes, well, and I like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episodes where Danny is the Danny Strong, Johnny, is the hero, and they even go to the extent of having him in the opening titles. Now, if American contracts weren't so, and agents weren't so powerful and strong in terms of, you'd actually want it to say starring Danny Strong and not everybody else. But of course, that those sorts of things are locked in so tight that you couldn't. So actually, just having no title sequence at the front is bold enough. But yes, it would have been very bold if it had been starring Reece Shearsmith in Sleep No More or whatever. And it is kind of his show. And yes, as we say, the Doctor, as Graham says, the Doctor kind of just gets through the story. He's a sort of visitor to it. Somebody else is pulling the strings, and the story itself is the trap, which I think is really interesting. It's really bold. Wow, I wonder why it's at the other end of fan appreciation, because it's smart, it's clever, and it's bold. So even if it doesn't even if, as I say, it's perhaps less than the sum of its parts, or not as it doesn't do what it might have done, considering some of the amazing things about it. My God, it's still aiming really, really high and doing really, really interesting things. So I think it should have bonus points. Do you know what I mean? Which I haven't got. I haven't got any points. Here's Graham signing off.
Well, thank you, Toby, for letting me come into your podcast and spread my spores among your listeners. I've enjoyed it, although it's been tiring. Maybe time for a nap.
Ah, brilliant. Well, thanks, Graham, and thanks to going to so much effort. Please buy his forthcoming book. In fact, what I might do, this is going out for patrons, literally days after I record this, but I might scoop it forward in the putting it out there for everybody else schedule in order to tie in with Adventures in Type and Space, which is Graham's let me make sure I get the blurb right. Let me just call it up because it's from 10 Acre Films and it's called Adventures in Type and Space. And let me tell you about it. Let me plug Graham's book. It's a charity bookazine. It's called Adventures in Type and Space, and it's out in December 2023, and includes in-depth interviews with Bernard Lodge, Peter Govey, who Bernard Lodge was the title designer of the first 4 sets of original titles. Peter Govey, special cameraman, 1970-79. Okay, Gareth Edwards, titles animator, 87 to 89, and contributions from Sid Sutton, who did the Starfield sequence, of course, and the family of Oliver Elms, who did the title sequence in 86 to 89. A friend of mine at school knew his son, Donovan Elms. Illustrators throughout with rare and unseen imagery. Adventures in Type and Space is a celebration of the artistry and ingenuity that went into creating Doctor Who's extraordinary title sequences, told by the people who made them, and includes a foreword by Mark Gatiss. Ah, how appropriate. Proceeds will benefit UNICEF, Bernard Lodge's chosen charity. It's created by Graham Kibble-White, Jack Kibble-White, and Stuart Manning. It's 124 pages in full colour, and all pre-orders will be entered into a prize draw to win a one-of-a-kind print of the diamond logo taken from the original metal blockmaster used to create the actual TV graphic, personally printed and signed by Bernard Lodge. So pre-order that, and there's a link, so you can pre-order it at 10 Acre Films, who also have books about David Whittaker and the origins of Doctor Who, and Biddy Baxter, and they've done the reprint of the John Nathan Turner biography and the Verity Lambert and Andrew Cartmell's Script Doctor, and coming up soon, a book about the Quatermass experiment. But I'm not going to plug my own stuff until I can see the whites of its eyes, or whites of its pages. But yes, get Graham's book, Adventures in Type and Space. It's a charity bookazine. It's $12.99, and you can tell from Graham's contribution to that, he's a smart, insightful guy with an excellent way with words. better than clearly mine there, where I went excellent, then couldn't think of anything else to say. But like Graham, I am rather tired. And I will sleep for a lot more. And so until next time, I got a date with Morpheus. I think was the working title of that going to be The Arms of Morpheus. I have used The Arms of Morpheus myself to describe being asleep. But anyway, the wine of this podcast is drawn, and the mere lees is left this pod to brag of. So let us retire to bed before we hear any more voices cry, "Sleep no more." Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Graham Kibble-White, who can be found on Twitter, now known as X, is eating starburst, not opal fruits, as he types his pithy notes on it. And he's at Graham KW. That's Graham KW on whatever that platform's called when you're listening to this. I'm grateful to Graham and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, not that one, Julian Bashford, Peter Burns, James Gray Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, Tim Arding, Nigel Bromley, Jenny at Blue Box 99, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford, Kelp, Paul Dunn, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, and Chris Hyam. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Add your name to that list by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where you can get advance releases. Happy Times and Places is at least 6 months ahead. You can get bonus material, including monthly AMAs and bits from my archive. And you get pictures of my dog every Tuesday and a chance to interact and do things and leave comments and generally join in. And it's nice and it's benign, and it's the way of doing things these days outside of the glare of social media, and it's all right. And as I say, you get 3 releases a week at least, so it's not bad value, I am told, compared to a lot of what's out there, and the value starts from as little as £3 a month. And you can also go up the tier. You do get other little things as you ascend the tiers, but it's everything sort of content-wise is there at £3 a month. And whatever tier you're on, if you sign up for a year in one go, you get a 10% discount. So that's one option. If you want to do another where you just support when you can and chuck things in my metaphorical hat, you can do that by going to kofi.com/Toby Hadoke. You don't get any sort of bonuses or extra material there, but it's a way of perhaps not having to be tied into a subscription or anything. But occasionally, if you like the cut of a particular podcast's jib, going, I'll chuck him a few quid, because that's how the arts, and that's apparently what this is part of, tend to be subsidised these days, which is people like your good selves supporting creatives whose work you particularly enjoy. The support doesn't have to be financial, though, because I know just how difficult times are these days, and they're not just difficult for self-employed lovies, they're difficult for everybody all over, apart from the people who've got more money than they need, but there are fewer of them, and they are working harder to keep it amongst themselves. But hey, let's steer away from the politics and just say, if you are struggling, or you would prefer your money to go on day-to-day things, irrespective of struggling or not, rather than the entertainment that pours into your ears, that is perfectly fine as well. I'm simply glad that you're listening. Of all the things out there in cyberspace that you could listen to, I presume you've done Serial, have you? You've ended up listening to this and still listening this far into it. But you know what would be really nice and what costs you nothing? A 5-star review. It's we're in a land of extremes. A 3 would hurt. A 5-star review and a few lines saying what you like about this to entice other listeners to listen to this. And the more listeners I get, the more it sort of justifies the time spent on them, and the better I can do the end product. So if you could do that on iTunes, on Patreon, on Spotify, on wherever you get your podcasts, and mention it in social media circles as well, that is all very helpful and hugely appreciated. Talking of social media, I'm on Twitter in 2 manifestations at Hadoke Podcasts. Tips off when these podcasts are out and has all the feedback and chit chat about those. And then at Toby Hadoke is my tweet feed, which has Doctor Who content. I tend to reply to people I tend to reply to people. I sometimes save them all up for a bit. And, plugs for my other work, including my comedy shows, which are all at Excess Malarkey Comedy Club. That has its own Twitter feed at Excess Malarkey. That's an X and S, then Malarkey, Malarkey. And I'm on Instagram at Toby.Hadoke, where I'm getting much better at videos and and content in that particular corner of cyberspace. So if you could join me there and follow me there, that would be great. Like and subscribe to the podcasts as well. It's all about the numbers these days, and so if you could help me with any of those, I would be really grateful. You will find some write-ups in magazines when they talk of the, quote, sleep no more. And in fact, I seem to recall an Invasion of the Body Snatchers. No, maybe it was another. It was reviewing something, and it mentioned sleep no more, and that was a quote from Hamlet, which I queried, and of course it is a quote from Hamlet. The words are consecutive in Hamlet: to die, to sleep no more. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what? Yes, that's Hamlet, of course. That's the to be or not to be speech. But I would say it's a bit of a stretch. I mean, I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that the quote is sleep no more, because it's to die, to sleep, stop, no more, to sleep, perchance to dream. So it's not sleep no more, it's sleep, full stop, essentially, no more. So sleep no more is not, although the words are consecutive, I would say you are not lifting it from Hamlet. And of course the context is in the Scottish play, the context is more appropriate to if people are using the quote sleep no more. I think, you know, if a writer is invoking it, they are thinking of the Scottish play where the protagonist is haunted because the voice is telling him that he shall sleep no more, because doth murder sleep, the innocent sleep. And so, you know, his curse is that his nights will be haunted long, and wakeful ones he will sleep no more. That is different than to die, to sleep no more. So those two, probably the two most famous plays by William Shakespeare, have those words consecutively. But it's the Scottish plays. The Scottish plays the thing. Ha ha ha. So there we go. I, however, will sleep quite a lot more, and imminently so, which is what I'm about to do now. I hope your dreams are nice ones.